More money. Let's see. No. The answer is A, recording, reporting, and financial analysis of all financial transactions of the company. And then preparing balance sheets and income wasn't really a definition that I gave you. And then obtaining financing, making investments, and conducting a profitable operation. What is that? It's kind of the purpose of one of the statements that we have, and that's having the use of the statement of cash flows gives you, those are the three operating activities that you have, but for decision making, so recording and reporting. Which of the following is listed on the income statement? Cost of goods sold, inventory, retained earnings, or just A and C, cost of goods sold and retained earnings? B? D? No. Good guess. B? No, B's on the balance sheet. So yeah, it would be either A or C. But so cost of goods sold, remember that's your revenue or your selling price minus the cost of goods sold equals gross margin. We'll beat that into you today because that's what people really look at in your financial performance, and then that's essential. Cost of goods sold is essential in determining your inventory turnover, which is what you're going to be. Oops. So this one, I already got the answer up, but remember that connection between the balance sheet and the income statement is net income. Remember, the balance sheet is a picture in time, a snapshot in time. The income statement covers a period and generates a profit or loss, and then you stop that period, and then that income or net income or loss goes to the balance sheet. You have a new picture in time for the balance sheet, and then you start over on the income statement. So in an institutional pharmacy practice, reporting a patient's charges as revenue when they are delivered to the patient, along with the related expenses, is reflective of which accounting principle? D, you get the prize. That's good. It's a matching principle. So when you deliver the services, the patient has been in the room, you've given him your services, and you've recorded the expenses that's related to that, and that's the matching. So you get a proper net income or difference, and you know if you're operating at a profit or a loss. All right, so today we're going to look at financial performance measures, and that's in the form of ratios because we need to quantify the operating results. So you have the absolute dollars, but then maybe percentage might be better, so you can see a percentage from one year to another or one quarter to another, so you can see how things are going and you can take corrective action. The third thing, describe and calculate the inventory turnover. You're usually given the inventory turnover. Corporate will send you your operating report, and at the bottom they might say your inventory turnover is X, but I think you should know how to calculate that because when I was at CVS, I was like, well, how did you really calculate this? Because when you do it the normal way, it doesn't really come out. And a lot of times you don't have the information because you don't have a balance sheet that will show. But anyway, it's just to show you how it's calculated, and then you'll be able to do that. And then we're going to talk about monitoring inventory levels and determining gross profit, gross margin, and net income. Oops. So first we have just a little cartoon. We're in great shape. Nobody understands our financial statement. Can we all agree with that? All right, so there's our objectives again. And just again, you may not think this is important now, and it might not be until later in your career, but if you think about it, I always say we don't get old, fat, and great because we want to, and it will happen to you guys. And so here's an example of Tom Ryan. He began working for CVS in 1978. That's when I got out of FSU as an in-store pharmacist. So just like what some of you are going to get a store with Publix or Walmart or whatever. And then he was actually the CEO from 1998 to 2011. So he became the CEO. I left CVS in 97. No, he was there while I was there. I was there from like 99 to 2001. So he was the CEO, and his total compensation was $16,231,292. So he made the big bucks, and it was a base salary of $1.4 million and a cash bonus of $3.5 million, and stocks and options were granted for another $10 million. So I put this up there because he made it big, and someone's got to do it, and they're pulling. They're taking the pool of you guys, and only one goes to the top, and it might be you. And it would be important to know some of this information. All right, so financial ratios come in two types. There's a profitability ratio, which shows you how efficient your operations are. In other words, how are you at making money? So we're all busy here. We're all employees, and we do all these services, and we stock the shelves, and we do everything. We dispense prescriptions and stuff. But are we making any money? Or we're at the hospital, and everybody's, the dietary's there, the radiology's there, the housekeeping's there. Everybody's doing all this stuff, and are we making money? Can we make a go of it? Are we going to be here? And liquidity is the other category, which is solvency, and that's the ability to pay bills. And I put especially payroll because that's important, because why? We all like our paychecks, and then after you get out, some of you are going to continue in your married life, and some of you will get married, and then you might have kids, and you're buy a big house, or another house, or a larger house, and you buy cars, and you have schooling, and education, and then retirement, and we become dependent on that paycheck. So these ratios might show you how your company's doing, and if you go for a job, maybe you could review their financials, especially with independents. You could just say, could I look at an income statement or something, and you know a little about what these numbers mean, and run a few ratios to see if you want to take employment with them. But it involves a conversion of your raw financial numbers for a company into ratios, which tells you a lot more than the absolute number. And it usually involves the information from the balance sheet and income statement. And so what do they use this information for? So they'll compare your company to industry average. So they do that a lot with Walmart. CVS is a big player. Walmart's a big player. Then the PBMs, U.S. Healthcare, Blue Cross Blue Shield. So they have industry averages. And so they have a goal, just like in healthcare. We have, with diabetes, we want to hit that A1C of 7 or 6.5. So we have a number that is the appropriate number that we can strive for within our industry. And it'll always be different. Like your inventory turnover for pharmacy, we're always going to be looking for a 12. But in others, in a jewelry store, maybe a 2 or 3 might be good, because what do they do with jewelry? How often do we buy jewelry? The majority of us. Maybe some people buy a lot to the excess that maybe they shouldn't, or then you have problems with your credit card. But most people make an investment in jewelry less often than other things. So their inventory, they have a lot in the store, but it's not going to turn, or it's not going to be replaced, sold and replaced a lot. So what do they have? They have a higher gross margin because they have to get more money from you. So when the ring's $5,000, they may have only paid $1,000 for it because they need that $4,000 profit to go on for 3 months before they sell another ring, and it keeps it on. But in a grocery store or a place like Target or the pharmacy, we have a gross margin of 17% or 15%. And so that's a lot lower, but how do we make money then? We do a lot of transactions. So we get a lot of little money, like grocery stores, they traditionally have like a 2 or 3% gross margin. And so they have to have you come in the store every day, buy stuff, and keep turning lots of sales and get the profit from the gross margin to pay all the people and provide the services. So ratios provide a broader comparison, better than the raw numbers, and then you can relate a small company to a large company. So a small independent pharmacy with a large pharmacy, the numbers should really probably be about the same, or if there's a difference, it can be explained away and be appropriate. And then, like I said, you have a standard that's comparable to your ratio with these treatment guidelines that are shown here. Oops. All right, so we do ratios with a financial ratio. It's just dividing one number into another, and it just has to be what number we're going to pick. And then when you do an analysis, that's when you look at the company and say, well, here's all these numbers. What does this mean? Inventory, cost of goods sold. They got $770,000 on the balance sheet. What does that mean? Is there too much of something, too little of something? So we can do analysis, and vertical and horizontal are the ways they usually do it. Vertical is up and down, and horizontal is across. And we'll see that. Like right here, we have a balance sheet. And of course, it's a picture, so it always has as of or at December 31st, so it's just a snapshot. And then here's all your values, and you say, okay, that's nice, that's absolute numbers, but what does that mean? Well, then if you do it here, in percentages, that tells you that you've got 3% in cash, accounts receivable. Here, the big one is investments aren't too big, building and equipment, but goodwill and trade names. They're 40%, 39.6%. And most companies don't have that, because what is goodwill and intangibles and trade names? It's just what it says there. They're intangibles. That's the feel good. That's what the company name is worth, the logo, and what people are willing to pay, the brand recognition. So, and that's hard to put on the balance sheet. There's a lot of accounting rules to do that. So the assets above that are a lot more important. And most companies, their 40 or 50% will be up here, and they may not have anything down here. So it does tell you something about what type of company it is. And again, vertical analysis is just dividing each category of asset or liability over the total assets, and then you get your percentage. And here's an income statement, and you can do the same thing. But look at that, it says for the period. So again, an income statement covers the period. It's all the transactions that occurred during that period, and they're recorded on the income statement. And there we've done it in numbers and in percentages. And here's where you see the gross profit or gross margin, and that's the important part that we'll focus on today. And then here's where you do it horizontally. And you can see 2000 X6 was 45%, and then it went to 36%. But look at this, it's about the same number, isn't it? So quantitatively, you say, well, there was 225,000, so 213 is good. But then you look at sales and you say, well, they sold $100,000 more, so that's good. But then what happened? The cost of goods sold went from 55 cents to 64%. So that says the first year, we spent 55 cents to get the inventory, and then we sold it. But then the next year, we had to spend 64 cents. And that's a big difference, going up about 9 percentage points. So that's how the percentage tells you a difference. And then you see down here, it fell through, and they made half of what they made the year before. So they had a 50% reduction in their net income because of what happened. So if you analyze these numbers, they help give you clues to make management decisions and how to fix it. So like I said, it's approximately the same amount, but the big percentage difference here in the gross profit. All right, so we have the two ratios: profitability, can we make money, and liquidity is, can we meet financial obligations, can we make payroll, pay for the inventory that we've ordered, keep the lights on, do an advertising campaign, the air conditioning, all those things, pay for health insurance, the drive-through, the bushes outside, all those things go into that. And then uses of ratios is the management is making decisions. And so you just want to do that. And that can be you and your supervisor, or as the years go on, you'll be the supervisor and you'll be out with your stores and they'll say, you know, your inventory is turning at 2 and we're looking for 12. And so they'll have to explain it. So don't get too concerned with this, but those are all the different times that all the people on Wall Street, you know, when you look at all the financial channels and all these people buying and selling stocks and financial analysts and so forth, these are all the ratios that they use. You don't have to know any of them, but I put them up here so you can just see that they're analyzing different parts: ratio of sales to assets, rate of return on common stock, earnings per share. You might hear a lot if you watch CNBC or MSNBC or whatever. The financials, the PE ratio or price earnings ratio tells you something, and so you'll get familiar with those if you are interested in investing in stocks and financial performance of companies. And again, it uses both the balance sheet and the income statement. Then here we have liquidity ratios, which is how to meet our bills, and that is more involved with the cash. So here, from our balance sheet, we have the current assets, that's what we have. Current liabilities, that's usually less than a year, so that's what we owe. That includes cash and accounts receivable, and their ratios to, it tells you a lot quicker if your company's in trouble. So the people who work corporate in cash management, they're doing these ratios to figure out what the trends are and where they're going, because they have to be able to pay the bills, they have to pay the vendors to get the inventory, so you can have deliveries, so you can fill patients' prescriptions, so it can go out the door, so you can get a paycheck. So it's all a process and a chain. And then here I put in red, you see the inventory. What did I say inventory was? How do you get inventory? Gets delivered, but how does it get delivered? You ask for it, and then you have to what? Pay for it. So it's a use of cash, and that was on the statement of cash flows. And I know all this is new to you, but I just want you to be thinking in the big picture. It's like, well, have inventory on the shelf. We have to order it. Now someone's got to pay for it, and that process of selling it and then getting the money back with a profit, and then we turn that into pay the bills, pay the payroll, and then buy more inventory. And that cycle has to be kept going, and why do companies fail? When you hear bankruptcies, like what was a company that went under, Toys R Us or something, went under a couple months ago or this year. This didn't work because people weren't buying their stuff, and they still had stuff on the shelves, and they couldn't get orders for the next season, and they couldn't get agreements from their merchants to not pay them, to have Christmas inventory to come in so people could buy it, and they could get money and pay it later. And so finally, they went broke, and they had to file bankruptcy. So that's just trying to show you how it all turns out in the end. But cost of goods sold over average inventory, and it assesses the efficiency in the management of the inventory. And that's what? That's balancing your inventory at your store or your inventory at your hospital with patient care, and how well you're meeting patient care, but still meeting the financial needs of the corporation. And that's all the ones with the cash, and then the inventory is the big one. So there's a lot of pharmacy metrics that we have in the community. I think everybody's familiar with the number of prescriptions dispensed per day, average prescription charge. Has anybody ever heard that before? NCPA, people in NCPA should probably know that. When I was in school, it was $50, and now it's from the NCPA Digest. It's just your sales over the number of prescriptions processed. So the average cost or the average selling price of a prescription is now $56. And I remember at our pharmacy, when I was in school, what did I work at? An HIV pharmacy. What do we know about HIV drugs? They're expensive, so now it's a specialty pharmacy. HIV used to be specialty because of the disease state, but now it's a specialty because of the cost of the drugs. And so what was our average prescription price? Higher or lower than 50? Higher. It was about $150, $160. So you can tell, boy, they're doing something different because they're getting $150 on average for their prescriptions. What are they selling versus a regular store that's getting $50. So the numbers do tell you something if you try to think about what do they do. And then they do percent third party and generic. Why do they do that? Some of you might have seen reports, but they talk about that because these have different profit margins. We talk about the PBMs are squeezing the profit margins lower and lower and lower. And so the margins are getting squeezed. At an independent, that's more critical because they don't have the front store sales to keep up and cover that. So they might go out of business. But whereas CVS and Walmart, they've got you in the store and you can buy groceries, you can buy over-the-counter stuff. And so they can cover some of the losses with that. And this is the one that always irked me. It's RXs per pharmacist per hour. And as a healthcare professional, you guys should not like that one too, because how are they going to judge you on how many you do per hour? Because you know the variability, especially if you go out in front and counsel someone in OTC, or you do flu shots, or you do other shots or MTM services or anything, that's going to take away from sales. And so that number is going to go down, so they shouldn't judge you because you might be generating revenue from another source. And then here, inventory turnover, and if you're the pharmacist, probably the pharmacist in charge, they're going to make you responsible. And in the hospital institution, you don't get away with it, it's just a little different. They have medication inventory per adjusted patient day. It's not important to know how to calculate, but you just think, well, how much inventory do we have for how many patients we have? So whatever that standard is, if you go down your census in the hospital, if it's only 20% of what it usually is, then that number is going to go out, and then you're going to see what's happening, and it just gives you the information that you say, well, we need to stop ordering inventory, we need to use up the drugs we have because our census is going down and our adjusted patient day number is not working. And then you can do a medication inventory turnover rate. So there's our turnover intravenous to oral drug ratio. That's a big one in institutional practice, is how much are you giving IV and how much are you giving PO. Which do you want to decrease? If you can give the same drug, which way would you want to give it in the hospital? PO, why is that? Pardon me? Yeah, and they're saying less competition, but it's also less nursing time, less prep time, less tech time. So all that goes into the process is less time. It's easier to get a shelf off the bottle and count it out than it is to compound something. So those are some of the inventory ones. So let's talk about how we get gross profit. Here's an income statement. Remember, it has sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit. Then all your selling and administrative expenses, taxes, and then you go to net income. And so that is sales minus cost of goods sold as your gross profit. So gross profit is the dollar amount, gross margin is that number expressed as a percentage. So gross margin is the $220,000 gross profit over the gross sales as a number, and you get a margin, and here it comes up to 40.1%. And so you know if whatever company this is, 40% is the standard. And like I said, we have a gross margin in pharmacy, we're looking for 15 to 18%, so our cost of goods sold are a lot higher than they are here. So it's very important to analyze them. It's indicated that what's left after paying for the inventory, so then you can pay all the other bills, the payroll and the insurance and that sort of stuff. Positive changes reflect a higher ratio, and negative reflect a lower ratio. And then one thing is important, when margins change, management reacts. And so we've got some examples in here, but when you hear people say, margins are down 2 points or margins are down 1 point, and you think big deal, but it is a big deal. And because experienced financial advisors or financial analysts know that 1% represents millions of dollars, possibly in absolute numbers, and so it indicates that something is not right in either positively or negatively. And in pharmacy, it's your sales mix, and that's what we said. If you never thought about it, we've got on a slide, like you sell mostly Medicare, or you sell mostly Medicaid, or you're all cash, or you have third party. Well, they all have different reimbursement rates, and so your gross margins are going to be different. If they're all significantly different, which one would you want to work with the most? If you don't know anything about them, but they're all different, would you want the highest one or the lowest one? The highest gross margin, because it's what's left over. So if you have the higher percentage, means that the sales minus cost of goods sold as a percentage was a lot higher, and that means there's more money around to pay people. And if that doesn't change how much you pay them, whether you sell to someone or not, then you have more money left over. And then it can be different because of brand and generic. We always say generics cost cheaper, so they are to the patient. You get a total cost is cheaper, but on the financial statement, you have a different gross margin. And then obviously injectables and orals. So here's a little 5-minute video that helps emphasize this, and it's just fun to watch. And
if you write anything on your computer, you need to get grip.
I read too much all day. This is Shark Tank.
Hi, my name is Aaron Tweet.
I don't know, has anybody ever watched Shark Tank? Yeah, so it's been on, and now it's on network TV. It used to be on, I guess, Saturdays on ABC or something, but now it's gotten, I think it's gotten away from its original intent, but listen to what the investors are looking for, and they ask questions and their thought process, but then it comes down to the numbers, and we'll talk about that.
Ian, I'm from Front Royal, Virginia. I'm here today seeking $200,000 for a 29% stake in my company, Manpack. The Manpack is a sling-style vertical messenger bag designed by guys for guys. You know, 40 years ago, men carried nothing more than a money clip, but times have changed. On average, guys now carry 4.5 pounds of stuff. Things like keys, cell phones, tablets, energy drinks. Point is, guys need to carry stuff, and we have very few options. We have the backpack, the briefcase, the traditional messenger bag, and I'm sure all of you remember the fanny pack. I have designed a superior product that I call Urban Tactical. You can wear this thing 3 different ways. First way is band over your style. If you need to take it off quickly, it has a quick release clasp. A chest-mounted utility pocket for your cell phone with a magnetic button closure. Line it up, locks itself shut. 3 rows of wallet for tactical gear, and a collapsible beverage holder. When you need it, it's there. When you don't, not a collapsible beverage holder. It falls up and out of the way. To get into it, you don't need to take it off. Just spin it around and open it up. Plus, you have auxiliary pockets for things like your wallet, loose pocket change, keys. Now, if you're someplace where you're going to take it on and off frequently, you can throw it over one shoulder. Notice how the weight still hangs over your lower back due to the ergonomic design of the strap. If you're in the city, on the metro, you can wear it reverse, keep your possessions in front of you, and safe from pickpockets. The mission statement of Manpack is to make men more prepared, because a prepared man is a better man. With your support, we can turn the man bag market into the man pack market. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Aaron, what's your background? Are you that was really good. What's your background? Are you a designer?
No, I built my first house when I was 19, and I was in Fort Benning, Georgia when I was 17.
Were you in the Army?
I was.
You know, when you first walked in, I looked at it and I thought, oh, another knapsack for guys, whatever. But you definitely wowed me with the utility of it.
Can we see him? Can we take a look at
Sure, yes.
Thank you.
Here, go to the black. Thanks.
You get the XL.
Yeah, he needs the XL. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Have you sold any of these?
I have.
What do you sell?
What do you sell?
Okay, so last year, 76,000. This year, we're at 65,000 year to date.
Is that online?
What do you think you're going to do this year?
145.
What do you sell them for?
$59.95.
And what do you
What do
make
you
them
make
for?
them for?
They cost right now $22.05 a piece.
So this product requires an explanation because it's hard to differentiate against anything else.
That's true. You have to educate the consumer because this is an emerging market.
Bags are emerging market.
This is the millennial version of the MERS.
But it's not right. It's not a purse. It's not a backpack. It's a man.
You know
It's a man.
But Aaron, here's the concern. I was in Europe last summer with my family.
Right.
I had a similar bag and I wasn't ashamed to wear it in public because every other guy in Europe had one.
Exactly.
When I came back here, I put the same thing on. I didn't make it one block down the street. Everybody was laughing at me.
You know,
But that's not immersed.
and
Robert, I don't think they were laughing at you for that.
you know, a couple of things. One, it's not immersed. When you see the guys that I sell to, the Secret Service agents and military personnel, law enforcement personnel,
I never laugh at somebody with a gun.
right, exactly.
Let's go to the real numbers. How many did you sell last month online only?
Probably like 40. You know, I mean, it's not good. But I started this with $5,000. I've been doing a lot with next to nothing.
Why do you think the company's worth $700,000?
Okay, $50,000 for the design patent
But
to
what did you get the design patent for?
for this model.
Like what? A bag with a strap that has so many pockets?
It's just the look of
What
it.
else are you adding to the value?
Multiple sales for 2 years, being the $145,000 projection, $18,000 in intellectual property, that being the bank of YouTube commercials that I created. It really put it up.
You're putting a hard value on those.
Value is a matter of perception. If we're on,
Yesterday-
if we're on an island and you have a bar of gold and I have a cheeseburger, who's rich?
I'll take the gold. Okay, so get the plate and leave the island.
Let's go, Robert, hold on. Are we done? Are we done with all the numbers or just?
No, okay, and $200,000 in goodwill.
And 200,000 in goodwill.
If I give you 200,000, I'd have to own about 260% of the company. About that. Because we have very small sales. That's the reason I'm just a disciplined financial investor.
I understand.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Kevin. I think this is a hard business to invest in. I think you're a hustler and you're a great salesperson. I just think it's hard for you to scale, which makes it hard to invest in. So for those reasons,
We see many people with good sales, bad sales, and then we normally bet on the person. And thank you for serving our country. Thank you. We also look for small indications on how good this partner would be. I'm going to charge $20,000 for your videos that you may have made at home. It indicated that you don't have a sense of financial intelligence when it comes to what partners need and operating this business. And for that reason, I'm out.
I have to tell you, as impressed as I am with you,
Okay. So if he didn't get his money,
Set
right?
it off before the offers. If there were, I know.
They're asking a lot of different questions. They're thinking a lot about it, and I think it goes into other things. But you saw there, he said, they asked two important questions. What do you sell for? $59.95, and what does it cost to make? Or how much does it cost to get it to be able to be sold? Is $22.05. So they figured the gross profit is $37.90 each bag, and the gross margin is 63%. And on Shark Tank, they like gross margins at above 50%. So they want easy street. They want something where you sell it, you get almost 50 to 70% of your money back. And they love those operations. But that's not what a lot of companies have. But I was just showing you that they're pretty cutthroat. They said, let's just cut to the chase now. We're listening to all this stuff, and is it immersed or whatever? And then they go, what do you make it for? What do you sell it for? And how many do you have? How many did you do last year? So that could all be in financial statements, but he's a startup, so it's all about that. And then Lori, she asked about just online, and are online sales better than a brick and mortar store? Yeah, because it's easier online, right? You just have to warehouse it and then ship it out. But at a store, you have to have it delivered, and then you have to have people in the store. So a lot of these startup companies do it online because they keep the costs down. So just here again is some analysis that it says historically, revenue per prescription from CVS declined from $52, so that was your average prescription cost, to $48 over 5 years, in account of growing penetration of generic drugs. So what do we know about generic drugs? They're cheaper. So if all my prescriptions are being sold, the average is going down, then that makes sense, right? Because it's generic drugs, which we comparatively lower priced than branded drugs. We estimate Walgreens revenue per retail prescriptions to decline marginally over our review period. So they're saying, and our competitor, Walgreens, is going to do the same thing. Marginally means as a percentage, they're going to get the same thing. So that's where you're comparing the margins of two companies doing basically the same thing. Whether one's doing 10 million and one's doing 10 billion, they should all have about the same margin. And then again here, CVS widened its gross margin from 17.7 in quarter 2 of 2002 to 18% in quarter 2 of 2003. So they're looking at it year to year, and it went up 1 point, and they talk about it like they widened it, and it's proportion of generic drugs where they can make a higher margin. So see, they're just saying 1 point was worth mentioning, and then the difference. Then here's another little management question. What do we do if we don't change it all and just something magically happens? Not funny. I try. All right, so net income. How do we do the net income? That's total revenue minus total expenses, and then you come to the net income. But in the gross margin, and that here a slight decline in revenues showed a 1.7% increase in the net income, and they call that the bottom line. So you can read through this, but as generic drugs offer higher gross margins, aided by rising proportion of generic sales, CVS saw its net income grow by 16% year over year. That's what YOY means from 2013. So I'm just showing you these are clips. They're a couple years old, but it's comparable to anything that's in Forbes or in the Wall Street Journal or any of these business magazines. It would be in your trade journal and everything in hospital industry or pharmaceutical industry journals that keep up with the business aspect of it. And then so, what about PAPs, the patient assistance programs? In seminar, everybody says there's a patient assistance program that they can get to give this $200,000 drug for free, and they have to. But how can so now that you've seen a little bit about financial statements, how does the company stay in business giving all this money away? They get 0 on the top line for sales, and the cost of goods sold is still, say, $100,000. So they have a big loss, right? Well, so what they do, and that we did this a lot, I saw this a lot at the clinic with HIV meds, they gave a lot of patient assistance programs, but what they do is they deduct it from sales. So this is just verbiage from a financial statement disclosure to the FCC or something, but it just says we take these deductions as a reduced sale. So they lower the sale at the top, they put the income or the cost of goods sold on the statement, they have a lower net income. That's all well and good, but then what do corporations pay to Uncle Sam? They pay taxes, right? And they do it on a consolidated basis, so they have all their divisions and all their drugs. So if they're selling a lot of Lipitor and they're making money hand over fist, and then they sell a lot of HIV and they're losing a lot of money, when you add them together, what happens? It's all netted, and they don't owe the government anything. Is that a good thing or a bad thing if you're the company? Not paying taxes is always good. If you don't have to pay tax, that's good, and the corporation doesn't have to pay tax, so they lower tax. So if you lower an expense, like income taxes, you actually make that money and you can use it for something else. So that just tries to give you a little idea that patient assistance program is just netted against all the other drugs that they're selling and making a profit on, and that's how they can give them to patients for free. All right, so our last few minutes are going to be on inventory, and this is the part that we have to work on. It's just going to be managing that number because it's a use of cash, and if we don't spend it right away, we have accounts payable. So inventory on hand and cost of goods sold is a line item straight from the income statement, and the amount representing the cost of the purchases and it results in the matching of the cost to produce or dispense an item with the resulting sale or reimbursement. So again, that's where the concept of matching is. We match what we sold with what we have. We have a cutoff, and we have a profit. Then we're going to do a ratio, so it all makes sense, because if you didn't do that matching, if you cut off on a Friday, you cut off on a Thursday the next week or next month, it all gets disjointed. So matching is very important, and then you can run your ratios and get a number that means something. So this is what I'm talking about turn. They usually call it turns per period. So just if you think your inventory in the store, in a community pharmacy, it's down there, it says, we want it to be about 12. So what does that mean? Well, if it turns 12 times, that means what we got in goes out, in and out, in and out. And if the number is 12 for a year, what does that mean? On average, once a month, you turn all the inventory. Now, that doesn't mean every inhaler on the shelf came in and went out, because what we get outdated. We go through with those little dots and we put 612 or whatever, and then you have to take the red dots off and then take the blue dots off. And so you're monitoring how old the inventory is getting, but basically they want a pharmacy to do enough business, and that's why you get codes every day, and that's with your fast movers, and that's the stuff that you're selling regularly. But then the slow movers just sit on the shelf until they're sold, and on average it turns once a month. And then the jewelry store, it says 1 or 2 times per year, and that's what the difference there is, because people don't buy it as frequently, so they have to have a higher gross margin. So here's another formula we're going to have to know. Cost of goods sold over average inventory. Average inventory is just the beginning inventory, and the ending inventory divided by 12. So remember, the balance sheet is a point in time, it's a snapshot. So here's your balance, here's your cost of goods sold from the income statement. So revenue minus expensive, it'll say right there, cost of goods sold is 1,008,000, so that gives you your top number. Then we want the average inventory. So here we have a balance sheet, we have cash, and we have a year. Remember, it's a snapshot, so it's the same time for 2014, it's the same period for 2015. So say it's 12/31, isn't the 12/31/14 balance the 1/1/15 balance? Nothing changes in one day because everything's closed. So your beginning inventory, your ending inventory of 1 year is your beginning inventory for the next year. Do you follow that? It's just a picture. So you have a picture of what I have at the end of this year, what I have at the end of that year, and then what I had at the end of last year is what I started the new year with. So you take the ending inventory for 2 years and just divide it by 2. And so it's 250,000. And then we calculate it, and the inventory is 7.2. And so we said for community pharmacy or an institutional, 12 is what we're looking for, so that's a little bit slow. So we're not doing a really good job, is what that says. Because the higher the number means the better we're doing it. But pharmacists, and so management may use other ratios and metrics, but only you can worry about turnover, and that reflects your quantity on hand. And that's where you get into managing what's on the shelf. What are you going to order every day? And why do they worry about this? It's because cash flow, they have to pay for it. And if you just think on it, so say here, if your cost of goods sold was $1.8 million and the average inventory was $250,000, if you decrease the ending inventory just $50,000, then you would have an inventory of 12, and that's a saving of cash to buy inventory of $100,000 per store. And again, $100,000 per store times 7,500 stores, 7,000 or 7,500, I don't know how many they have now, but that's a lot of money. And so if you're thinking about the corporation from a whole, they have to find that money to put it on the shelf. So if they had the larger amount they had to borrow that money, and the difference in the $100,000 per store is $750 million at 2% interest rate where they borrow it. That represents $15 million in savings in interest costs. So you see how this is coming about? It may not matter on your day-to-day thing, but if your inventory is 7 and they're borrowing this money and then they can't pay the bank or the lenders, what are they going to do? They're going to shut your doors and take the inventory, and your store is going to be closed. And so that's why this financial information is important. So we got 10 more minutes. So this just shows you punch the numbers, and we just do it. Lipitor selling. You buy a bottle of 90 for $270, so they're $3